Hi, welcome to the third video, the last one in our deep dive Q&As in our Agent SRE series. I'm James, I'm a tech lead here at Fuzzy Labs, and I'm joined by
Misha, MLOps engineer at Fuzzy Labs.
And this one we're going to be talking about the costs behind an agent like that. What does it mean to make it scalable? So we've shown that agents work, we've shown what it needs to be them to be performant and useful, we've shown what the kind of considerations for security are. So what's next? What are the kind of drivers of costs in an application like this?
So the drivers of the costs differ from the traditional software. With the traditional software, we are mainly concerned about the infrastructure costs. So we pay for the servers, we pay for monitoring, maybe for the software licenses. But with the agents, we also need to consider the costs of the LLM. So we pay for each token that we input into the model and the model outputs back to us, or we pay for hosting our own, which is a significantly larger cost than most of the other things that we would serve.
So about these tokens, what kind of things eats up all these tokens?
The tokens are consumed by the tool description. It is also used up by the thinking process of the model itself, so the input and output that we get from the model. And also the logs, the file contents, the responses from various services, all of this consume tokens.
So there's loads of stuff we're talking about here. What can we do to reduce these costs then? Is it mostly centered around reducing the size of these tokens?
We have optimized the costs during the development of the SRE agent in 3 different ways. First of all, we have reduced what tools the agent has access to. So since we are sending all the tool descriptions to the model every time, the costs associated with the tool descriptions are significant. If we only select the tools that we know will be useful for the agent, we can bring the cost down by almost half. The other 2 things that we did were around caching. So Claude API supports so-called caching, where we can only store the description once and then retrieve from the cache, which costs significantly than input tokens, which brings our cost by 39%.
Is it 39%?
Yeah, brings the costs down by 39% more. That's how you phrase it. The other 2 things are around the caching of the said tokens. So Claude API supports cache, which means that we input the tokens once and then read them from the cache, which is significantly cheaper than the input tokens. So if we cache the tool descriptions, which we have already cut down with Claude, the costs are brought down by 39% more. And we can do the same thing with the conversation history that we have with an LLM, so that we only store the input that we put to the model, including the logs, the file contents, and all the things that I've already mentioned, and only read from the cache afterwards. Combining these 3 things brings down the costs by 83%.
That's massive.
Or if we talk real numbers, from around 40 cents per diagnostic action to around 7% per diagnostic action.
Big savings. So that's a massive saving that we can do through the use of those tools. But a natural next question would then be, what about self-hosting?
So we have run some calculations for 2 particular models that might be used for this kind of thing. So we considered Mistral and Mistral Large 2. Both of these models can be self-hosted, and especially for the smaller one, the economics seem to be reasonable if we don't take into account that we need to heavily utilize the model for this to be economically viable. Otherwise, it's significantly more costly than using some API.
What do you mean by utilization?
So by utilization, I mean that when we serve our own model, we pay for the servers by time rather than per request. So if the server is idle for a long time, so if the incidents do not come continuously, for example, there is some idle time that we still need to pay for. which brings the overall costs up, overall cost per incident.
So then are there situations where you might want to use a self-hosted LLM?
There are three situations that I can give an example of where the self-hosting makes sense. So one is when we have a continuous load of data to be processed with an agent, so we can fully utilize the LLM. The other example is when we work with sensitive data, so it cannot leave our own infrastructure, so we have to use self-hosted LLMs. And also the third thing would be something that can be batch processed. So we spin up the LLM server only when we need to process the data and spin this down.
Let's talk about the cost of these compared to a human doing this job. So at what point could this become cheaper than a human?
The economics of this is actually quite interesting. So let's suppose this very hypothetical example. There is a human SRE who takes around 15 minutes to diagnose an incident, which would cost us around $16 per incident. There are many assumptions made here. Let's then suppose that we have deployed this SRE agent alongside our human SRE. And here we have the SRE agent diagnosed an incident and the human to verify whether the diagnosis and the solution is good. So this would only take around 2 minutes from human time, which brings the cost down to about $2.50, I think. Again, many assumptions. But our agent will not be perfect, so some of the things will need to be redone by the human. But even considering that, only 15% accuracy is required for the agent to be economically viable.
Is that 15?
15, yes.
Wow, so not much at all. So it's more like a tool to assist people that way, and that's where you get the gains.
Yeah. So you get gains both financially, because it costs less to diagnose more straightforward cases, but it also frees up the resources of a human for more complex things. So that's a win-win.
So this kind of like hybrid working environment where we have humans and agents working together, is that what the future kind of looks like here?
I would say so. This definitely works from economics perspective. It does work from the effectiveness perspective, as was shown earlier. And also with the agent, you have the support 24/7, at least for the simple cases, which is definitely beneficial.
Awesome. So thank you very much. That kind of wraps up our Q&A deep dive series. Thanks for watching.